Good evening. Happy New Year. Noting the time and presence of a quorum, I call to order the Winter Hill Community Innovation School School Building Committee. And we will start with the ceremonial roll call.
All right, so
point it to you.
If you can indicate your presence by saying here if I call your name. Ruben, Courtney Goslin, Kathleen, Ed,
Here.
Jesse, Chris, Courtney Kosla,
Here.
Emily,
Here.
Daniel,
Here.
Richard,
Here.
Suraj,
Both Richards.
Here.
well, Rich.
I thought I was Richard and you were Rich because you were here first.
I know, it's weird.
It's weird.
I'm going formal.
It's an embarrassment of riches. All right, we get both, and then Suraj we have?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Mayor Wilson?
Present.
Andre?
You're on mute, Andre.
There is. Jill? And Hannah. So that's one. That's 9 present at meeting opening.
Awesome.
Jill's in the meeting. Jill's in the building. She might just be running late. We'll note when she joins.
Awesome. Our first item on the agenda is to vote the meeting minutes from both November 3rd and December 1. Before we do that, are there any comments regarding the meeting minutes? Okay, the only one that I noted was Steve D'Ambrosia. I know that you capitalized the A in your last name. So that's the only one that I saw in the meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Correction.
I'll make that correction.
Yep.
So move to accept the meeting minutes of November 3rd and December 1st as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Daniel. Let's call the vote. And Sean, when you're ready.
All right. Ed.
Yes.
Courtney.
Usually the other Courtney's first, but just
She's not here. So.
okay. Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Daniel.
Yes.
Richard H.
Yes.
Suraj.
Yes.
Rich Raish.
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
And Andre.
Yes.
All right.
Excellent. Our next item on the agenda is old business, and the construction advisory group recommendation updates are here. Rich Raish, I'm going to look at you.
Thank you.
And we have some progress.
So yes, the CAG did finalize the report asynchronously. They did not need to meet again. They met, as you might recall, twice prior to our last meeting. They were able to resolve all their comments. I believe there might be 2 outstanding signatures as of Andre being one of the 2. As of the last time I checked in with Stacy, but everyone else had signed off on it. But I think it accurately documented what the decisions were. Generally across the board, the CAG recommended that construction at the existing Winter Hill site at Sycamore Street is preferable to Trum Field. Noted a number of reasons for that. Community opposition to developing Trum Field, the additional cost that would be incurred to offset the loss of the Article 97 land and construction of what would essentially be a softball field elsewhere. Not actually documented in there, but the absence of it was the fact that there was really no substantial pro to moving to Trum Field. And so across the board, all members recommended construction at Sycamore. We will, of course, still have to go through the exercise here with Perkins Eastman on documenting that in this committee, and we'll have some review of that data in this committee, but the CAG recommended against that. There was not a unanimous decision on the size of the building. The majority recommends that we build to the maximum size allowable under the MSBA process, which would then, sort of imply the gen ed enrollment currently at the Brown to be in the new building, but deferred or delegated the decision on Brown closure or remaining open to the school committee. And generally across the board, the idea was that the CAG wanted to give the school committee maximum flexibility in programming across the district, also acknowledging that we have a number of improvements that will need to be done on the other schools, the Argenziano, the East, the West, the Healy, and that swing space during those renovations is going to be critical to the district. And so the hope is that we can keep the Brown in some educational form open for a number of years post opening the new school to allow for those needed renovations elsewhere. There were 3 dissenting members of the CAG who wanted to keep the new school small and then sort of thereby force the Brown to remain open as a K8, K5 school. So that's sort of the general takeaway. The report itself is posted on the website. I'll put that in the chat so that we can put it in the minutes. And this is actually the same site where a lot of our information as it becomes available will start to get posted. We're going to purpose the same website for that. But the document in its entirety is there. Andre being on both the school committee and the CAG, if there's anything that you think is important that I missed for the report here, please fill in the color.
I would add is that by a vote of 6-2, the school committee in December voted to endorse the recommendations of building a school up to the size the MSBA would allow at at Sycamore. And absolutely acknowledging that may require or suggest the closing of the Brown School.
I think one final thing to point out was that Mayor Ballantyne did thank the CAG for their service and appreciated the report and did coordinate with now Mayor Wilson on that recommendation. Certainly open it up to Mayor Wilson to add additional color or not, should he so choose.
Yeah, thanks. I was pleased to see that my predecessor and I were very much in agreement on this, and that aligned with the recommendation coming out of the CAG, which is large school at 115 Sycamore. So, very appreciative of the work that was done on this, and very eager to see what we can do to make sure this moves along as quickly as possible.
Excellent. I just want to recognize all the work that went into the CAG, both in the many meetings and also that happened behind the scenes. And I know that each of us was a part of it, at least in conversation, formally and informally, and just really want to recognize that this is sort of community discussion at its best, to really work through ideas and not to be afraid of tackling some big things along the way, which is going to make our work more informed. So I'm appreciative of what they did. Okay, I'm going to move to new business. And tonight we have an ongoing presentation from the selected designer, Perkins Eastman, and they will be updating us on a couple things. And then I will come back and talk about some scheduling and new meetings. As we did last time, because there was a lot of information, if there are questions along the way from the committee members, please feel free to raise your hands and we'll pause and clarify them as we go. Okay, Lisa, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you. Trying the share screen. Is it gonna go? There we go. All right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen right now. And Emily,
is
do you
up.
see if you
Yeah.
see hands go up, my team might miss them here and there, so feel free to interrupt us.
You got it. Thanks.
All right, great. So good evening. So for tonight's meeting, our team will give a quick, let me just go a quick work plan update. We'll share our traffic assessment and we'll review the preliminary space summary. And then we'll take a look at some test fits of the Winter Hill and Trump Field sites. So we are almost at the halfway point of the PDP phase of our project. We've been gathering existing condition reports from our consultant team and compiling this information into a big report that'll be submitted on March 31st to the MSBA. The site survey team has been out at the 115 Sycamore Street site. Brennan has been gathering site information over the past 6 weeks, so hopefully in a few more weeks we'll get some preliminary survey information from them. Our traffic consultant, Vinod Kalakari, is here from VHB. They've began an initial traffic assessment of the Winter Hill and Trump Field sites, and he'll share a summary of the observations with you tonight. Our team has also developed test fits at the Winter Hill and Trump sites in which Mike and Steve will present. And then after that, we'll begin work on the preliminary options for and assessments in prep for our next meeting. Bob and Mike Perillo have been working with the educational leadership team to review program needs. Bob's going to share the development of the educational space summary with you today. And I believe we're still on schedule to have our school visits on January 13th. And the visioning sessions will begin on January 20th. We'll pull together some sessions and share with you at our next SBC meeting. And we're also hoping to begin our community outreach this month, starting with the Winter Hill and Brown communities. So any questions on where we are in the process? Great. Then I'm going to hand.
Sorry, I had
Yep,
one
Courtney.
question, but I couldn't get my hand raised. The meeting, I don't know if that's on here, that the district advertised or was recruiting people for January 20th. Is that the Winter Hill and Brown family outreach, or is that different?
That's
Yeah,
the visioning. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so there was a call for individuals to join the new school building visioning forum. So that's going to happen on the 20th. I think it's at the Dojo in Summer Nova, 8:30 to 2:30. There was a request that anyone who wanted to be part of that to apply, and that application closed on December 31st, 2025. I've heard that there were about 70 to 80 people who did apply for that. Does that help, Courtney?
Is that the outreach to the Winter Hill and Brown that was just referenced, or that is a different thing?
No, I believe there's additional, and Lisa, you can follow up on that.
Yep, that's correct. That's the visioning sessions that Mike Perillo and Bob Bell will be running.
And Emily, will we talk later about that new school visioning forum, or is this the right time to talk about that when we're talking?
So it's my understanding that with coordination with the designer, that this is being led by SPS, the public school district, not necessarily this committee. So I would actually lean on Superintendent Carmona to speak to that directly. I don't have more information besides that there was a call, the deadline was when it was, and I don't have any details on that programming. Do you have a specific concern?
Oh, it was more of a question because parents were asking, Winter Hill parents were asking me how this fit in, and I wasn't quite sure. And then the actual application, what was like the goal of how it fit in, and the actual application only asked you kind of what your affiliation was, but there wasn't anything to write to like say why you wanted or were interested in. So we were all just kind of curious how that
So
fit in.
let me set the stage a little bit, and then Bob Bell, is it okay if I lean on you to fill in any details that I don't get quite right? So
Absolutely.
typically you can't design a school without thinking about what is this really for? And every community is unique. And the visiting session is a wonderful way to start that conversation of like, what is special about Somerville? What is special about Somerville public education? And hear it from stakeholders, teachers, parents, community members. That's going to happen in a focused group on the 20th. That doesn't mean that's the only touch point. There will be larger connections with the community, but the reason to have a dedicated one on the 20th is to be able to dive a little deeper. And Bob, if you could fill in sort of your particular experience working with Mike Perillo and Perkins Eastman.
Sure. So that's exactly right, Emily. This is a chance to do a combination of things where we will, first share and understand with this kind of broad cross section from the community, what happens in the schools now, where the future of education is going, and what Somerville values most. So it's a way to start to paint a picture of the visions and goals. It doesn't happen only here in a vacuum, as Emily had pointed out. Then we're going to more broadly engage the individual school communities as well as the community as a whole iteratively to help shape and vet it. But it does take a little bit of focused energy in some workshops with a relatively smaller group to make that progress and to make sure the educational leadership has a very strong voice in where that vision should go.
What I'm hearing is it's less about what the building looks like and more about what educational components we want to have happen inside. Is that right?
Inside and out, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Because to be honest, one of the critical items in this phase is to start to develop the educational plan. So the reasoning behind the different orientations of space, right? It's not just about the numbers or the design of it, but really to have that plan from an educational, manifesto is the wrong word, but educational sort of pedagogy to then support that.
Okay. And do you have any details? Does anyone have details on how many people will be a part of that and when they will be notified?
It sounds like there was the open solicitation that changes from community to community. It can be as few as 20. It can be as large as nearly 100. So it sounds like this one will be on the upper end. Sounds like it'll have large participation. It also takes on different shapes. In some communities, it's a series of like 3 workshops over time. And for Somerville, it was felt that one dedicated day would be best. So it'll be a day with multiple workshops and activities happening.
And then Lisa, do you have additional information that you're sharing here?
This was part of our presentation back in, I think it was November. I know these dates have changed, and I think that what Bob was kind of emphasizing is that some districts break this up into 3 days, but these topics will all be addressed in one big session. Do I have that right, Bob? Based on the latest
pretty
plan.
close. Some of what we're seeing here is also programming discussions that happen with the ELT. So
it's a combination of both, yeah. Right? So, but I think this center one in yellow is are some of the things that would be discussed more so in the visioning process, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Courtney, I will tell you, I did one of these a couple years ago in Acton, Boxborough. And one of my favorite moments was that there was a 4th grader named Jake, and his big idea was to have a huge slide in the building. And we actually, we did not put a huge slide in, but we did reference his vision when the building got open. So, there's some great ideas that come out of this. Suraj, you have a comment?
So will this be the outcome of will the outcome of this will be the basis for the design or just the amendment on design?
This is one touch point among many for the educational vision.
Just for the educational or the preliminary uh, preliminary orientation of the building itself?
It will be the theory for how education is delivered. It won't even be about building design. It'll be about sort of different spaces, different philosophies. We're going to have many, many, many more conversations before we have a final building design. Okay. Great clarifications. Thank you for that. Okay, Lisa, how are we doing on schedule?
Very good.
Okay.
So I am gonna hand it over to Vinod to take us through the traffic assessment.
Thank you, Lisa. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vinod Kalikiri. I'm a senior transportation planner with the firm of VHP, based out of Watertown, Massachusetts. And VHP on this team with Perkins Eastman to look at transportation, mobility, and access and circulation around the school site. Anything related to transportation would be looking at. And as Lisa mentioned, we've already started looking at both sites, both the Trumpfield site as well as the 115 Sycamore site. It's an ongoing process. There's a lot more work to do, but we do have some initial findings and thoughts on how things could lay out at either site, what some of the data looks like, and we have collected some preliminary data, summarized them in charts and graphics that I'll share with you. Some initial thoughts on circulation, pickup, drop-off, that kind of specific detail. Again, I know there'll be a lot more specificities to a lot of this information as we go through the process towards the end of the EDP as well as the SD phases of the project. But some of the information that we are gathering at this stage will be crucial, and it'll be again one of the data points, I guess, in the overall decision process on which is the preferred site and how exactly the site would need to lay out. So I'll touch on all of those as part of the next several slides. I probably have about 10 to 12 slides. I'll go through those quickly, but feel free to ask questions as I go along. So the general location, show the locations 1 and 2, the 115 Sycamore Street site, as well as the Trumpfield site, numbers 1 and 2, as well as their relationship to the Brown School site on the left side of the image. So, about a third of a mile between Brown School and Trumpfield, and about 9/10 of a mile from the 115 Sycamore Street site and Brown School, and about 6/10 of a mile between Trumpfield and 115 Sycamore. But this just gives you an idea of how far apart the sites are located as the crow flies between the sites. They're relatively close, but there are some noticeable differences, especially between locations 1 and 2, which will be the focus of our review and presentation today. Next slide. So one of the things that we use in a lot of our analysis, at least at this stage of the process, to understand site locations in relation to the population it serves is this watershed analysis, right? Especially for communities like Somerville, where as much as 50% or more of the student body actually walks to their neighborhood schools. We do want to make sure that the sites are looked at in the context of their relative location and comparison to where the students live. So the left side of that image shows a 15-minute walk shed, the dashed line for the 115 Sycamore Street site, and the blue dots on that map represent the location of the students that would go to that school. The footnote actually has a mistake in there. It should say approximately 20% of Winter Hill school students live outside of the 15-minute walk shed. So that note is not for Brown School. It's actually for Winter Hill School, which represents the blue dots. But essentially, 80% of the students fall within the walkshed currently. Only about 20% of those blue dots fall outside of the walkshed. If you look to the right side of that slide, we have similar information for the Brown School with the yellow dots representing where the Brown School students currently live, and the 15-minute walkshed around it. And you'll notice based on the note below it, about only 28% of those yellow dots actually fall outside of the walkshed, and the remaining 72% of the students live within that walkshed. So it is understandable that, since the school, each of those two schools are within a 15-minute walkshed for majority of the students, they do tend to walk, which is represented in the data that we have from the schools, which is in upwards of 50% walk. Again, since there is no school bus provided in Somerville, the remainder, the remaining 50% of the students at each school get dropped off and picked up by parents or their chaperones, a personal automobile. Some students take public transportation, but again, from a transportation analysis perspective, a 50% walk bike mode of travel is definitely something to focus on as we look at these sites closer from how we can accommodate different modes of travel. Next slide, please. And then this is just a graphic that shows, again, a 15-minute walkshed for the Trump field. So should the new school go on the Trump field site, you would see the number of students that would be captured within a 15-minute walking radius of that site. So quite a few of the Winter Hill student population in this map fall outside of that 15-minute walkshed. A good number of the Brown School students do fall within that walkshed, a 15-minute walking distance, but definitely the Winter Hill School population would be impacted because of the location of the site in relation to where the students live. Next slide, please. We created this graphic just for reference based on the chair's request. We wanted to show 15-minute walkshed for the West Somerville neighborhood school as well, that is located sort of north and west of the three sites that we just talked about. We don't have any data for that school at this point, but again, that kind of shows you the 15-minute walkshed comes close to the Brown School site.
Yeah, thank you for adding this graphic with very short notice, so I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you. Next slide. Another data set that we typically look at when looking at schools, especially when we're talking about a lot of bike population for the school, is the roadway traffic conditions around those sites. And this is just a general heat map of the traffic volumes, average daily traffic. ADT represents average daily traffic for the roadways near the Trump Field site as well as the Sycamore Street site. And you'll notice that the Trump Field site, given its proximity to Broadway, does have much higher traffic volumes. In fact, there's a section in there that gets to that falls within that 10 to 20,000 cars a day range, which is significantly higher compared to the traffic numbers you would see for both actually the 115 Sycamore Street site as well as the Brown School site. So there is definitely a lot more traffic to deal with, should you consider the Trump Field site. I did hear at the beginning of the meeting that it was voted unanimously to not pursue that site. But, we did look at it closely to understand the implications of a site, of a building at that location. Next slide, please. The other thing we look at is vehicle crash trends. So this is an important element when we are looking at school projects or generally any other type of new development in a community or in a neighborhood. So we look at historical data obtained from the Registry of Motor Vehicles as well as Mass DOT to understand the crash experience. And we looked at the past 5 years of data that's available, 2018 to 2022. And you'll notice that, I guess we'd start with the Sycamore Street site in the middle. There were about 3 crashes over the 5-year period that included 1 pedestrian bicycle crash. Near the Brown School site as well, there were 3 crashes. There were no pedestrian-related crashes at that location. And in comparison, if you look on the right side, the Trump Field site, there were a total of 25 crashes over a 5-year period around reported crashes over a 5-year period around that site, including 3 pedestrian bicycle crashes. So proportionate to the higher traffic volumes that you see on roadways near the Trump Field, there's also a higher incidence of crashes in that area, which obviously would need to contend with as if that were one of the sites that's selected for the consideration.
And I just want to say for the record that we should have no pedestrian bike crashes. Just 1 is too many. So, thank you.
Thanks. The next slide, please. So then we started looking at, I know you'll be seeing some test fits and other exhibits from others on the project team, but we started looking at that information, the test fits for building layout, where the primary entry points to the buildings are, which are represented by the dotted circles. And on the top left is the main entry point, for a new school building at 115 Sycamore, with the circle on the right representing the pre-K entrance, preliminary locations for the entry points into the school building. And in relation to those 2 entry points, where exactly you could have pick up and drop off along the curbside, along with an approximate number of cars that could be stacked should you arrange pick up drop off along those street frontages. So in total, between those 2 streets, Evergreen and Sycamore, could have upwards of 34, 35 cars that could be stacked along those frontages. Obviously, as we get into more detailed design, we'll need to take into account locations of trees and tree pits and other street furniture to make sure that we adequately accommodate pickup and drop off along those edges. But 30 plus vehicle stacking for a school like this appears to be generally adequate from our preliminary review. We did not consider any significant drop off, at least at this stage, along Thurston Street, just because of the limited frontage along the school, for the school building. Obviously, there's more frontage, there's more length on that street that could be used for pickup drop off, but just along the frontage where the pre-K entrance will be located, there isn't a lot of room to have an efficient pickup drop off. So I would say that for a site like this, Sycamore Street and Evergreen Avenue locations would be the most appropriate locations. Plus the one-way circulation pattern that you have on Sycamore and Thurston, one-way northbound on Sycamore, one-way southbound on Thurston, would actually help with the clockwise circulation, and would be able to efficiently drop off students on the correct side of the vehicle as they pull up along the curbside. Obviously, this was the location, the Sycamore Street site was the location of the original school building that's been closed. But there are a lot more opportunities with the increased site coverage and how the new building will be laid out to further improve pickup and drop-off operations along these streets. One thing that would apply actually to this site as well as Trump Field site is that when those pickup drop-off operations do happen in the morning and afternoon, obviously that would affect on-street parking along those frontages. So that would need to be taken into account and how to manage resident parking and other parking requirements or needs along those 2 frontages during school operations. Next slide, please. We did a similar review of pickup and drop-off opportunities in relation to where the building entry points could be along for the Trump Field site. And for this location, based on the test fits, the primary entrance would be, just given how the site is laying out and how the building would be laid out. The primary entrance would be in that northwesterly corner, the intersection of Cedar and Broadway, which unfortunately is probably one of the busiest locations in that section of Broadway. So that's not at the right location from a pickup drop off or an entry perspective, but that's how the site lays out. So I would say that's probably another negative, if you would, for this site to consider, for a primary entrance being in that corner of the site. The pre-K entrance would be on Frene Street on the south side, which actually provides, room for up to 28 cars for pickup and drop off, with no pickup drop off along Broadway, Charles Ryan, as well as Cedar Street frontages.
Rich, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to put in a word for Jill, who isn't here. At least half of that area is needed for DPW operations, particularly in morning drop-off time. So I don't think we would actually have that much room, and none of those DPW operations could be moved to Charles E. Ryan Road.
Making the case itself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually you'll notice there's actually some perpendicular parking along the middle stretch of Frene Road that I believe it might be used either for the fields or maybe used by DPW. But I agree, there's a lot of competing needs in that area for accommodating school needs as a new use in this area. And if you go to the next slide, please. So to sort of recap what I just presented on some of the previous slides, the Trump Field site is located in a congested location of the city that limits the opportunity for providing efficient access and circulation. That actually ties into the last bullet on this slide, which is, because of that, they could expect a lot more traffic impacts in that area should the new school go on the Trump Field site. So that's the general finding as it relates to the Trump Field site. In addition to the longer walking distances for students, especially the Winter Hill students, who would be a lot of whom will fall outside of that 15-minute walking distance. The Sycamore Street site, on the other hand, provides a lot of opportunity given how it's laid out in the site characteristics to have much more improved circulation and operations for pickup and drop off, as well as from a pedestrian safety and circulation perspective. It's a much better location. The one negative, if you call it that, is that moving the Brown School students to the Sycamore Street site would result in more than 70% of the Brown School students falling outside of that 15-minute walk radius of that site. So that would be, essentially those students most likely will end up, being driven by parents and chaperones or some other mode as opposed to walking to school. Both sites require parking management, so that will need to be looked at closely as we advance further. And again, when you combine the two schools, as opposed to just accommodating the existing schools at their current locations, there is an increase in student population. Compared to the existing conditions, I noted it's a 45% increase in student enrollment. If you actually look at the design numbers, it's actually close to a 60% increase in student population at the 115 Sycamore Street site compared to the current population at Winter Hill School. So it'll be an increase, a sizable increase in student population, no matter which school site you look at when you combine the two schools. And for that reason, and given that there will be a lot of students walking to and from school, we need to look at ways to further enhance safety for pedestrians and bicyclists around either site, and definitely around the Sycamore Street site if that's the location for the new school. Next slide, please. And just to touch on the next steps that we would need to go through, obviously, as I mentioned, we're still in the early phases of this transportation review. We'll continue to refine our analysis and findings as the project advances. There will likely need to be a more detailed study as we get into SD, or more likely during the DD phase of the project, to be able to actually look at individual intersections, roadways, traffic volume, speeds, and all kinds of data to make sure that we are coming up with the right set of enhancements, traffic calming improvements, or any other interventions that may be needed to help improve the circulation, traffic flow, and pedestrian safety around the school site. We'll obviously continue to engage with this group as well as the stakeholders as we go through the process, with the goal of identifying a set of improvements that are be appropriate for this project that get implemented in time for the opening of the new school. And that's all I had for today, and be glad to answer any questions on what I presented.
Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks. Just on the subject of traffic calming, I wanted to make the point that Sycamore Street already has been calmed in the form of numerous speed humps on there. And from conversations with Director Ross, and I know there are plans to do some raised crosswalks on Medford Street. I'm gonna guess one of those would be right there at Sycamore in front of the school. So just wanted to make that point as well as yet another argument for why 115 Sycamore makes a great deal of sense.
Thank you. Rich, you have a comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I happen to have three boys in soccer, so I've driven to Winter Hill a lot, and it's a tough area, particularly caveat I'm the Brown school parent, so I think one of the disadvantages of the current plan, which I don't disagree with exactly, is there's going to be a lot more people driving their kids over to Sycamore eventually, right? And this is going to either by car or by bike, depending on how you do it. And it's been my experience that the one-way street, not Sycamore, the one going the other way, is extremely narrow. And if it gets messed up, it becomes a parking lot really quickly. So when you're looking at that, really walk up and down that street. It's extremely narrow, and I've seen like weekend traffic on it several times. It's a very weird road.
Thurston, yeah.
So just keep that in mind. My kids freaking love the playground there, by the way, which I understand is going to be impacted, but these things happen. But yeah, I'm just concerned. I think this is one of these things, as we all have this conversation with how the city juggles its schools. I think traffic is always a big issue in Somerville, and having as many local schools as we possibly can, obviously, will do a lot to mitigate that traffic. But I think we can all be in very good agreement that Trum is a poor idea, and I think your data firms that up very nicely. Thanks for what you did.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Vino. I'm going to advance over to Bob's update on the preliminary space summary.
Okay. So we have started test fits, which you'll see in a moment. But in order to do those test fits, we need a kind of a first cut at the space summary template. This is not presentation friendly. So what I'm really going to do, and it's really not for any detailed review. This is just a start version 1. There will be, sometimes there are 20 versions of the space summary before it gets settled. So this just allows us to get started. It's really just an intro to the form. So next slide. So if I just start at the top, going left to right on the space summary, this is an MSBA form. Space types are on the left-hand side, and they trickle through 12, nope, not yet, trickle through 12 categories here, which is how the MSBA organizes the program. And within each one of these, there's a tally of the net square footage within that subject area, as well as the individual spaces that are listed.
So Bob, just at a higher level, is it fair to say that the state does this so they can compare one school to another in the Commonwealth? Like they have a common way of understanding how big each school is and where those spaces fall.
Yeah, and you'll see as I go through the explanation here, they have their guidelines, which are automatically populated. And so most of what we do through this process is confirm, why we may need something different than the MSBA's default calculations. So,
Yeah, Andre, do you have a comment?
Someone was going to comment on a question. I'm not sure which one it is yet. But over the break, I had an opportunity to read Massing's recent report about the deep inequities in the MSBA formula and their systems. And I was wondering if people had thoughts about how accurate, fair, or equitable these formulas are for these space summaries.
I love that question. And
Mhm.
can we hold it maybe to the end of Bob's presentation? I'll go directly to you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll continue left to right. Next slide. So at the top, there are, in this case, there are two columns for the existing buildings because we are tracking both Brown and the Winter Hill at Edgerly, because that's currently the space is being used. We are also listing the abandoned Winter Hill school building to understand, what the square footage was there. But it's really these two columns are so that we can look at what exists at Brown and what exists right now in the Edgerly School for Winter Hill. In the middle are the proposed columns, and we have two here because we obviously have two enrollment design enrollments. One is for Winter Hill alone at 690 students plus pre-K, so that doesn't include pre-K, and then the Winter Hill plus Brown School at 925 student capacity plus pre-K. And then to the far right are the MSBA guidelines, again, also cast to measure, what the MSBA would suggest we need for 690 students versus the 925. Next slide. What I can tell you is that on the left-hand side, I'm describing that this template back calculates the space needs based on the enrollment. So at the very bottom of this form, which I'm not going to zoom into, if you just type in the 690 or the 925 student enrollment, it populates how many classrooms you need, how many science rooms, how many art rooms. This is the MSBA's form. But what's really important here is it's built with many assumptions, and we don't take those assumptions. That's why we meet and have multiple programming meetings, the visioning sessions, because we need to understand what's right for Somerville. And that could be a number of things. In this MSBA template, those lines that you see that are colored yellow, that is, the MSBA requires that we separate out anything that's slightly different from their form, and it stays highlighted yellow so they can see what's different. And you can see just in our first cut, we have quite a few things that are different. And this is normal. So for core academics, like classroom spaces, you have Newcomers Academy, and those are much smaller, much fewer students per room, but they still need rooms of a certain size. So that right there is very different than the MSBA. They would just calculate 23 students per room. How many rooms is that? So Somerville is not that. So we need to account for newcomers as well as what your class size policies are. There's also other things like breakout spaces. So one of the things we are hearing very early on in discussions with educational leaders is it would be really nice to have breakout spaces between classrooms for one-on-one services, but for other opportunities for independent learning. So these types of things will change or be different than the MSBA. In the middle of this form, or going down to about the middle, is special education. And the only thing I can say here is the MSBA assumes a certain percent of your population is special needs, and that generates a certain number of rooms. We obviously never take that. We build it from the ground up. We have had individual conversations with the special ed director as well as educational leaders to understand every program you have, every bit of space it needs, and what the future looks like for that. So, and these conversations are iterative. We've had one lengthy conversation. We're going to come back multiple times to refine this and make sure we're really casting the needs as best we can. I'll just point out a few other highlights. The cafeteria in the MSBA formulas, they default to 2 lunches. You would never operate 2 lunches in a school of this size, but that size of 2 lunches generates a much bigger cafeteria space. And that may be something you want because it's also the auditorium, it's a cafetorium. But we also know that there are other uses. There's the community schools and the family learning center that can benefit from having larger space. So there's some negotiable things like the cafeteria that even though you don't want 2 lunches, we may choose to have that larger cafeteria for other
And,
reasons.
and just to clarify, the reason you wouldn't want only two lunch periods is because you don't want 350 kids in one room at one time eating in a certain time slot. Courtney, you have a comment?
Yes, I just heard the cafetorium mentioned. Do we know that this will be a cafetorium and not have a separate auditorium, or was
So
Um,
that's
Bob, you can
okay.
say this
No,
much better than I can.
yeah, that's a great question. So the MSBA default is a cafetorium. We've worked in communities where, like Dennis Yarmouth, where they have such a strong music program that they opted to build an auditorium, and the MSBA will allow you to do that. They may not reimburse um, for an auditorium, but they will reimburse for elements of it that fall within their space category, like the stage itself. So you are able to color outside the lines and decide what's best for Somerville. Um, we've been in communities where we've had a gymatorium or a stage that opens to both the stage and the gym or to outside. So we're not locked in a box here, but this is just starting with their defaults. And square foot is money. So, the thing we want to do is make sure we right size and build what you need and what will serve the community well, but we want to be conscious of overbuilding as well. So the visioning process and then all the iterative conversations that'll come with the community will probably flush out, how important might an auditorium be as a standalone space, and we'll see if that becomes a high priority. The last thing on this down at the bottom of the page are other spaces. And this is something, believe it or not, even pre-K, even though the MSBA recognizes you have a pre-K program, they categorize it or they place it in the other category because it's not part of the enrollment calculations. It's separate. There are various things that land in this category. Every community is different. We see mothers or nursing rooms that are they're small spaces but required. The MSBA tends to reimburse, certainly for pre-K, certainly for mothers in nursing rooms, sometimes for secure safety and security type spaces. Spaces like community schools and family learning center, they may or may not reimburse on. They will allow you to build it, but they may exclude it from their reimbursement formulas. So just to be aware of that, it's a negotiation. We will have rounds of submissions to the MSBA where they will observe what we're showing and they will hold their decision until later submissions on whether they'll reimburse or not. Hope that's helpful. It's nerdy and it's never fun to present a spreadsheet.
Okay, Andre, is this the right time?
Yeah.
You're on mute. I think you were unmuted and then muted again. So I want to make sure we all hear what you have to say.
So this our time. I think you certainly touched on it, but it's not exactly a secret. First of all, the MSBA assumes that you're building schools for a bunch of middle class white kids on flat ground in a suburban environment, and for all the reasons we all know, that's not what we're doing here. And there have been recent reports showing just how inequitable MSBA funding is. So one, I'm glad to hear that we are already starting to push back on some of these formulas and assumptions that do not match some of those reality. I'm glad to hear that. And I want to know what our thinking is. I think from a policy political perspective and just from a negotiating the realities of trying to maximize our funding going forward on these fronts.
Well, I think I'll take a first stab at this, and I'll welcome conversation from others. I think when we start to build out the things that we want as a community to be essential in this, you have to sort of think like what is the goal here, and there's going to be multiple goals. Obviously, for some districts, it's to maximize the funding, right? Let's see how much state money we can get. For others, it's how can we showcase certain elements that are really important to our community. And to Bob's point earlier, maybe that's an auditorium versus a cafetorium, right? This is why the visioning and these community conversations are going to be so important, because they will form the basis of where we go from here. And Superintendent Carmona, do you want to add to this? I don't know if you had unmuted to jump into the conversation.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, well, thank you. I just got home. I had to, I was in another meeting, and so thank you for giving me the time and the space. Just a couple of things. Show my face. I was driving, but oops. Sorry, just give me 1 second. No, just a couple of things I wanted to say. One is that
you're muted. I know
I'm sorry.
It's like Monday for all of us. Don't worry about it.
All right, I'm gonna have to. You won't be able to see me because my phone is still, and I'm trying to open my computer at the same time. So what I wanted to say, there are a couple of things that I wanted to touch upon, and one of those is this piece around the size. I do think that the numbers that have been shared need to have a little bit of a scrutiny, because the current numbers at the school we're talking about 340 at the Winter Hill and 230 or 25 at the Brown. So the numbers that I know is an issue of capacity, is that right? But I just don't want to also make sure that people are not confused about what is the actual numbers that we currently have in Somerville in terms of the student body, the student enrollment. And I know, at some point probably that clarity needs to be put in place, but I just wanted to, because I know that there are some folks who have said, oh my gosh, this is going to be a huge building in terms of the number of students, and that's not necessarily the case. But the capacity is something that we really need for multiple things. And then back again to the question of the who is this building for and what is this building like? I think we need to make sure that we understand that we have the educational leadership team is actually embarking on a process of gathering the understanding of what are the basic elements that have to be in place to address the needs of the students, the needs of the staffing, and the needs of the things that we have to do from an instructional perspective. And then the other piece around that is we are basically collecting ideas from the community, collecting ideas from visits to other sites to really identify what's possible and what is also something that is unique in Somerville. So I wanted to make sure that folks understand that this is not a done deal, that this is a process that is going to require a lot of visioning, a lot of creativity. The question around the lunch and the cafeteria, yes, you're right. You cannot have a space with only 2 lunches. It's impossible. You have pre-K students all the way through pre-K through 8. So just even the grade configuration would not allow for 2 lunches. And there's some other things that I can share in terms of the logistics of that. But I do feel that the perspective in terms of what MSBA is asking versus what's possible and versus how do we make sure that this is the most equitable process, I think we should be able to pause and think about what do we want for our community. And I think in that discussion, we can find something that is really meaningful to us and also reflects who we are as a community. I don't think I answered the question, but I just wanted to share that because I felt that I don't want folks to start to feel despair around a decision when this is a community process that I am fully invested in making sure that the voices of all our families are part of the decision. Emily, I don't know if there's a piece of a question that I needed to answer.
No. That was helpful context. And I think what Andre was saying, he was referencing the October 2025 Mass Inc. report on some of the structural inequities in the MSBA process. And what's interesting about that report is it does recognize that the MSBA does good, but there are elements and part of the way that they are structured that disadvantages urban districts and those who don't have access to 21st century schools. And what's interesting about that is the report does highlight that one of the major barriers is gateway to entry, in that often urban districts only make up 19% of those that are accepted into the statement of interest, right? And so we've already hit that gate point. So we're there, but I think I would challenge you, Andre, as we go forward, to continue to ask this question, continue to push, because and Ruben brings up a really good point about capacity versus student enrollment, right? And one of the things that the report does put forward is that often urban districts suffer from overcrowding because they just don't have the amount of rooms to support student class sizes of a certain low size that you see in suburban districts, right? And also inequitable reimbursements for existing buildings versus building new, right? So I think there's some things that we already have on our side for this, but this is going to be a much larger conversation. And I also challenge you to bring it up in other realms in the city, not just the school building committee. Okay, deep dive. Thanks everyone for letting me say that. Okay, Bob, we got through the space summary.
Okay. We can move on if there aren't other questions and look at some of what we call test fits.
All righty. Oh, my computer seems to be locked up now. Bear with me. I am locked up. Oh, great.
This is like the best part of this presentation.
I know, huh? You guys can hear me, but my screen won't move, right?
Correct.
Or did it? All right. I'm gonna have to crash out. Unless Dan, can you open it? It's on the network. Here, I'll come over.
Okay, it's confirmed Monday. So why don't I fill the time? By checking in. Does first Monday of the month work for everyone for the next couple meetings? And I know we've cleared with the city February 2nd, March 2nd, and April 6th. Does that work for the group? I got thumbs up. Okay, cool. And going to continue virtual for these. That's good. Okay. So we're making some progress. Okay.
Emily, I think we discussed at one point having an in-person meeting when there's like plans to look at and put on the table and stuff, and I'm looking forward to that myself.
As me as well. I think for now this format works, but I completely agree with you that at some point we're going to need to do some in person.
What are you seeing on my screen?
Yes, seeing your screen. It's not full, but I'm seeing.
I know it's.
That's okay.
I think we're gonna have to just limp along a little bit in the interest of time.
No worries, Dan. Thanks for the quick pivot.
And see how ancient I am that I didn't do that so smoothly. But Mike is gonna take over at this point, I think.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening, everyone. So we want to start to study the impacts of the building footprint and massing on these sites. Although, as Bob mentioned, these are quite preliminary. We've taken Bob's.
So Mike, there are moments where you've got really good clarity sound, and there's moments where you go distant. So just want to make you aware of that.
Oh, sure, certainly. Thank you for letting me know. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is preliminary. Bob is still working, and the rest of the team is still working on the educational programming. The visioning will have an impact on adjacencies and size of the buildings. So these footprints will grow and shrink and morph as we move along. But what we wanted to do is take a preliminary look on the impact of the massing at this standpoint for the two different size schools on the different sites to see the impact that it does have on the site programming as well as the massing of the schools. So I think if you remember our initial analysis of the Winter Hill Sycamore site, we talked about finding the quiet part of the site. And I think the traffic study analysis drove that home, suggesting locating these learning academic neighborhoods away from Medford Street and away from the noisy parts and the busier parts of the site. So this is why we're suggesting looking at locating the academic spaces and those learning neighborhoods deeper into the site. Also, the east-west orientation, which we've discussed a couple times, how can that can have a significant impact on the performance of the building and the quality of those spaces. So academic spaces, classrooms facing either mostly north or mostly south. Next slide, please. And we also talked about, and we know that it's important for the city to have a clear separation between really the public and assembly spaces and the private spaces, your learning neighborhoods. So you can easily secure off those academic spaces of the building and be organized very clearly where after hours and evening use of this assembly spaces can be used without anyone having to traverse through those learning neighborhoods as well. First pass, something that we've learned from the initial pass-up programming and taking a closer look at this is we initially showed a 4-story building of academic spaces plus the assembly spaces as they terrace down the hill. What it's looking like now is a 5-story academic building, and this is something we're going to take a harder look at and see if we can come up with different options and try to reduce the height of this, understanding the sensitivity of the neighborhood, and try to keep the building, the massing as low as possible. But right now, as it stands for both 690 and 925 enrollment, we are showing a 5-story portion in the blue, which it does break down really nicely to 2 grades per academic neighborhood to keep those academic neighborhoods appropriately scaled. So it does work well in that and building organization wise, but we are a little worried about the massing as we move forward. The 3 entry points that we mentioned still on the northern end would be the main entry. On the east end would be the pre-K and K entrance onto the ground level for the youngest learners, and then possibly a separate event entrance off of Medford, which will give you direct access to the gym and the cafeteria up above. And then Steve will talk more about the site impacts of the site and this, but what we want to highlight and remind the group is that we understand how precious open spaces for the school, but also for the community. It's a fantastic asset. So we're going to identify all the possible on-site locations for outdoor play, but also spaces where the community can use, including the city annex portion parcel on the right-hand side off of Thurston and Evergreen. But there's also the St. Anne's Parish, which might become available down the line for additional outdoor space, but also taking advantage of the rooftop space for secure outdoor learning and educational spaces, especially on this site as the building terraces down the hill. And this I should mention, on the title that was for the 690 student population. So this footprint does not include the Brown School. And next slide, please. So if you saw it, the building got a little bit longer on the right-hand side in the east direction to add those additional classrooms as we bump up to the 925, including the Brown School, and it also got a little bit longer heading down towards Medford Street, a little bit larger cafeteria and some other spaces. It still remains a 5-story building. The east-west orientation still applies really nicely here. But if we click it one more time, please, Dan, the academic neighborhood still divide out really nicely, two per grade. This just gets a little bit longer in the east-west orientation. Still the really nice separation of public and private spaces. If you look at one more time, this is really the more significant impact is on the site, and it limits the available on surface, on grade, usable space. And again, Steve will dig into that in the next few slides. Any questions on these two before we jump over to the massing of Trump?
Courtney.
I do understand that you've talked about Medford being louder. And I know in previous versions, and this is all like draft form, and there's been like a little soccer field shown on Medford and Sycamore. But I just want to note that this is going to be a passive house, really tight envelope with likely triple pane windows. This is going to be a quiet building inside. And it's the gym that's on the edge. So I would really advocate for moving this whole thing closer to Medford Street. Right now, with the playgrounds and the soccer field in the back along Evergreen, it's a lovely escape for the community to be able to be away from Medford. And I know we're going to give this up, and maybe we get St. Anne's, and maybe even not just that building, but the parking lot, or maybe just the parking lot with the deck over it. But still, I would really push us towards Medford and adding more green space in the back, given how quiet the building will be inside.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson?
Thanks. To Courtney's point there, I like the idea of locating playgrounds, any athletic fields, whatever, away from what is the busiest street here with the most traffic. It's going to have the most pollution from traffic. It'd be great to have that in a quieter area, as far away from that as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And these are great feedback. And as I mentioned, these are going to morph, and we'll take that feedback as well as trying to bring the scale of the building down. We'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Oh, Andre.
So in this plan, we turn 50 Evergreen into green space. How does the city feel about that?
These are just test fits. How about that? I'll run defense. Just test fits. I think it's going to be part of a bigger plan that we'll need to use all the options.
In the larger building master plan, the idea would be to remove city staff from the annex, and according to the building master plan, move them into the 1895 building. So I think there's plenty of room here for discussion of how this integrates with the building master plan in the disposition of the 1895.
Mayor Wilson.
To Rich's point, yeah, there's a long-term strategy of getting away from all these annexes into decentralized siting of municipal employees and going to more of a Central Hill centralized campus. This would be in line with that, and that's why you see that in play.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say I do think plans that give the schools space, especially green space, in exchange for 1085, are more likely to get school committee approval. I think that's fair to say.
Very good.
Actually, sorry, can I jump in with a question, like potentially dumb question? Given it's a public way, any chance we're allowed to build over that and connect those sites potentially with the school building with a street going underneath it?
One of my former bosses used to say anything is possible with time and money.
Yeah. There's nothing prohibiting us from a legal standpoint from doing that, particularly that's public way, but it is just time and money.
Permitting.
Cool.
And accessibility.
So I'm just going to look at the clock, kind of keep us to all of our busy schedules. We've got a couple Trump Field options, and I think some conversation about landscape. So just give you a preview of what's to come.
Good. Take it up an octave then, Mike.
Exactly. Gladly. So this is a tough one. This is a really tough site. It looks like we're not going to go this way. But the study kind of proofs that out. We still get the nice clear separation. Orientation works pretty good east-west. You end up with a 5-story building, very similar to the other site. If you click it one more time, you see the separation there. Again, we're pulling the classrooms away from Broadway, away from the intersection. Challenge with drop-off that we learned, trouble with the main entry. And then what you identify here is, we illustrate here, is really limited on grade available space, especially for the 690. If you click it, maybe click through the other with the 925 a little quicker. The building does get longer in both directions, closer to the existing baseball field. So if you click through a couple times, Dan, please, you see very limited site access. So this one we really have to take advantage of rooftop program space for the academic portions, but on grade usable space that can be used by the community is very, very challenging and limiting. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to Steve, who takes a closer look at the areas in the program.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So obviously, as we know, we're really constrained when it comes to space. We referenced the CAG report. They're very adamant that continued use of community spaces and community access is important to the city. So looking at that and looking at the 10 or so different programmatical uses that we have, we need to really figure out through further conversations, what the school wants to have as it moves forward. So this is the smaller Winter Hill option here. The dark green you see, that is basically at grade, ground level open space. It represents about 45,000 square feet in this case, albeit along the edges for the most part. Roof space, we've got about 13,500 square feet that can be utilized. And then we look at the possibility of the annex space and the church property. When we look at all the different uses, we've estimated out about 50,000 square feet of programmed space. So we have about 45,000 at grade. We've got another 13,000 and a half on the roof. So that gets us to about 58,000. So mathematically it works. When we try to actually put some of these pieces on the site, you can see on the left there in the legend, we've got a basketball court and we've got the existing turf field. Those clearly don't necessarily both fit on the site as it is. So we need to be a little bit more creative about, can we overlap some spaces? What can be accommodated on the rooftops in all of these instances? And then, if we have the opportunity to utilize the annex space or the church property, that really frees up a lot of space to help us accommodate all of these different uses. So short and long of this one is that this, obviously, we have more green space at grade, more opportunity for community access. I can go to the next one. And then, we decrease our ground space by about 5,000 square feet with the 925 population. Roof space stays about roughly the same, but again, we're left with the same challenges, but also the same opportunities on this site. We can quickly go to the next one. When we get to Trum Field, what we find is that even though it looks like there's more green space, it's pretty close to what we have, but it's probably a little bit more difficult to work with, especially when we get to the larger footprint size. We're left with a lot of edge space here, more so I would say than what we do with Winter Hill. And then we also don't have the opportunity for any annex or additional properties. So you can see where if we needed to recreate a basketball court or the existing turf field, we're really limited, and never mind the challenges with Article 90 and recreating what's going to be taken away from this location. So this one and the next one, as you can see, it really compartmentalizes the space. You really only end up with a courtyard kind of space between the existing baseball field in the school to utilize for, playgrounds, recreation of community gardens, maze gardens, outdoor learning opportunities. So there's a lot of different spaces that we'll need to accommodate. Winter Hill definitely mathematically works out a lot better, especially with the likelihood of the annex space being available.
Steve, I noticed that
Yeah.
Courtney has her hand up, but maybe
Yep.
we could take that question.
Sure.
I was going to pause for a moment. Courtney, then Jesse, if you're still interested. Courtney.
Thank you. Could you go just back to the Sycamore slides just for thinking about it? We talked about this at previous meetings, and Sean, I appreciate that you went back and updated the meeting notes to talk about the St. Anne's timing, but could somebody say again, by what point in this process we need to know about either of these, or is it the kind of thing we could add it in? If it takes long, like we could make the best plan without these spaces and add them later in the process, or is there a drop dead date that we need to know?
So
I would say no later than probably, at your PSR submission, moving into SD design, we'd have to
Which is
know at
when?
that point.
Which is that? And could you, instead of the acronyms, could you say what those are?
Yeah, the preferred schematic. Yeah, PSR is preferred schematic report. And that's when you're you're really giving sort of the schematic, the pre of what this building is going to be. And then it goes into design development and construction documents. So that's really when you're choosing what your final location is. As for the dates, I think Sean or
August 26, 2026.
Okay.
But these things might take a while, right, to actually finalize. So most likely we're going to try to get the building onto the owned property, right? And the current thinking is the strategy is to utilize additional property for more open space, green space. So in that sense, it frees us. I mean, it says we're like moving forward without that for the building, but it can come along for green space.
And that was kind of where I was getting at with the question. Can we submit something in this preferred schematic report or the next set of plans without it, but still get MSBA to fund it a little bit when we add it a little late, if we add it a little later?
So
before the vote?
Yeah, forgive me, isn't landscape funding a percentage?
Yes, I think so. Anything outside the building, I suspect that you're going to be over the 8% site cap that the MSBA allows anyway. There's going to be some questions on, can you do it as part of this project? Because the vote will have to be just for the project that is submitted to the MSBA at schematic design. So I don't know that you'll be able to use the funding vote for this project to even use that green space if it's not part of the initial submission. That being said, the city can certainly prioritize that and figure out how to make it, have it being completed and funded as part of in the same time frame. But the MSBA is very particular about when you submit a project to them at your SD, which is schematic design, that is the project that's funded and that's what's being voted on. And everything that is being paid for or included in the project is included at that time.
So and remind us when the schematic design timing was?
Schematic design is about a year after the PSR.
Submit in February,
about 6 months. February.
End of February, or something like that.
End of February 2027, yes.
Yeah.
And it was 8% of the total landscape costs could be covered by MSBA. Is that what you said? 8?
Total site work. So oftentimes when putting in foundations and things it's a smaller site, so maybe there's more funding there, but it's just a cap to make sure that the MSBA is keeping spreading their money equitably throughout all the different districts, and that someone isn't getting paid to do massive field work where someone else doesn't have a big site, and they're losing on the fact because they don't have areas to put in fields.
So the vote could still include that. It could still include that. It's just the voters would have to be voting to pay for offset more of the cost.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that Jesse has a moment to put in his comment as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I have my camera off because I'm not in a good spot. But Yeah, so with Courtney share this sort of, real desire to see the St. Anne's parcel part of this project. I just think it lends itself so well in its position. And I guess, this is probably way off way out of bounds here, but and maybe complicating in terms of, complicating the project and overall sort of like when the design gets turned in or whatnot. But I would throw to the mayor or the city, anybody. Uh, I don't know how much room is between on the Sycamore Street side. I'm sorry, the Medford Street side. How much room is between where that sort of mock-up building is and Medford Street is, and whether or not, again, this might be a complicated deal, but if we were able to acquire the St. Anne site from the diocese, maybe we could cut off a piece of the current land that's there now, the Medford Street side. And the reason why I say that, as the ward counselor, we're working on sort of upzoning Gilman Square altogether as a larger plan for the area, just because it's so close to a transit node. A building there may lend itself to, sort of giving a more peaceful environment to the kids, and also be a way to offset the cost of the building from the Archdiocese. Again, I know that might be way overcomplicating things, but just something to think about. If something like that could happen really fast, then who knows what possibilities might open up. I just had to put that out there.
Yeah, thank you, Andre.
Well, that raises the question, because I know the city has in the past reached out about St. Anne's. I know the school department reached out about St. Anne's, and every time I'm aware of the response from Archdiocese is that we have not made any decisions to put it on the market yet. And so, while I 100% agree with Councilor Klingon that in an ideal world we buy it tomorrow, is that even realistic enough to be worth making plans around in the time frame we have to get a new school up?
I don't have the answer to that. And I think that's a much bigger question than we're going to solve tonight. I want to be fair to the designers, and that they're working off the information that we have now. But I think these are some great conversations. And I think I would welcome some direction of where these conversations can be had, if this is the right place for it, or in other areas as we move forward. So
Yeah,
all good points.
Sorry to jump in, but I mean,
Yeah,
I know that these conversations will be taking place offline with the city and so on. I'm just throwing it out there so that hopefully, the understanding is that this is a desire of at least the ward counselor and some other people, that we pursue this as quickly as possible, so that the design team can incorporate it into their design. So fingers are crossed, but school committee presider said, I don't know where the Archdiocese is at this point, but just hopefully we're going to get some news at some point in the very near future as to maybe something will be happening there. That'd be great.
Thank you. Okay, Steve, we kind of stole your thunder, but was there anything more that you wanted to tell us about Trump Field? Some new discoveries?
No.
Okay.
Basically what it comes down to is, the conclusion is that we do run into a lot more limitations at Trump Field. And I think that pans out with where everybody's leaning anyway. The opportunities are there at Winter Hill, and I think with the combination of the rooftop opportunities for more school-centric uses, and then using the ground level for more community-based uses, we can accommodate pretty much all of the uses that we see as a possibility. And then I think it gets better and a little bit more spacious if we can, access those other properties. So I think there's a lot of promise there.
Awesome. Okay, Lisa, Dan, I'll pass it off to you. Any other presentation items that you want to touch on?
So we have just started developing a matrix for comparison. We know that the CAG report also has other parameters, and basically, what part of our task is to do is to look at these different options and start to compare. So these are just some of the site comparisons with preliminary, stoplight, good, bad, and ugly, or good, better,
We're not
best.
seeing it, Dan. I'm sorry, we're not seeing the matrix on the screen.
Yeah,
You're
we're
not
still seeing Winter Hill, but
Oh,
that's
for
okay.
crying out loud. Well, let me
You
just
freeze up
see
too.
if I can. Yeah, maybe. Let's see if I can just share again. That's why.
Guess we all have a case of the Mondays.
That's okay.
There we go.
Okay, so just to say that we have these different parameters. We're going to be developing those. We know that we're going to add in some from CAG, and we're going to be doing this for the site, for the building, and be looking for your input. But given the time, we're not going to dig in, and this is preliminary, but we'll share that with our presentation that will come with the meeting minutes for approval. And with that, Lisa, you can just close us out.
Yep. So for next steps, we just need to confirm a date for our next SPC meeting, and at that meeting, we'll hopefully be in a position to give our visioning summary, give an update on community engagement, and then present some preliminary options and evaluations as we further develop the design options for the site.
Excellent. And we had some really good comments tonight about Medford Street and other adjacencies. And Superintendent Carmona, before you were on, we talked about the visioning session that is happening on the 20th. And I'll hand the floor to you.
I think, well, I was here most of it. I was driving. So
awesome.
one of the questions that came up was as to what's the participation and how extensive our outreach has been around that. I just want to make sure I'm checking with Amara right now on SFLC. But if it's an issue that you haven't seen enough information around our outreach, I just want to make sure that that information is passed along to my team. Again, I know that we use the systems in place that SFLC uses, which are very equitable driven. And we usually reach out to a lot of families within our district. But if there is an issue as to not many people knowing about the event, so I'd like to make sure that we do another round of outreach to make sure that we have the right people at the right table. That's one thing that was resonating with me, and I just want to make sure participation is one of those things that we need to encourage as much as possible.
We've been working with Ken, who's been working with the communications team with the city of Somerville to kind of get everything scheduled and get the right people or notifications out to the right communities so that we can have a successful participation in the outreach process.
Andre, then Courtney.
Sorry, yeah, actually building on that, I know this is my experience, with other outreach efforts by PS, especially ones on SFLC, is they do a great job of reaching out to our more marginalized and underserved communities. And they do a great job because they reach out directly to them, which oftentimes has the side effect of meaning that more privileged communities don't know what happened because it wasn't reached out, they weren't reached out to, it was reached out to by them. So this is one of those places where it was important for us to be clear that just because you didn't hear about it doesn't mean it's not happening. And we can always do better about making sure that privileged communities know these things are happening.
Good point. Courtney, then Jesse.
And to clarify, Dr. Pomona, my point earlier was actually just a clarification. Folks didn't understand what it was and how it fit into the MSBA committee process. Was it about the building? Was it about the educational components? It was clarified here. It was about the educational components. And then there was also a question about whether everybody who applies was going to get selected, and if not, how it was going to be determined, because there wasn't any question about, you only had to put your name and your affiliation and not kind of what you're interested in. And so the folks that I was connected with were just asking if I understood those details, but had heard about it.
Jesse.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Sorry. Yeah, maybe I'm just wondering, is there like a website or or how when anything happens in the city, people, if they go to an event and they put their email, they then are sort of entered into updates. So I guess maybe on the city side, or if it's the consultant, is there any type of communication tools that we're currently using right now?
Rich, is that the SPS Buildings site?
I don't know if we have any push alerts. Jesse, we'll get back to you on that. If we don't have that tool, we'll develop that tool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Just to piggyback on that, I know that we kept that section of the SPS website to update folks on the process, and it is a good question. I'll look into that as well. I also wanted to say thank you for the rich conversation, and Emily, thank you for the rich facilitation. I think that this is having so many smart people and so many diverse opinions and ideas is hard to manage. So thank you very much. I think you're doing a great job on that.
Thank you for saying that.
It's definitely hard to manage with two Riches.
Yeah.
And usually two Courtneys, but not today.
Any other comments before I open it for public comment? Okay. If any members of the public would like to make a comment, I always forget what's the right way to do this, but somehow show an indication if there's a Q&A or use a flag. We only have 2 members of the public here. Okay. Lisa, we confirmed that our next meeting is going to be on February 2nd. And I think that's when we were having some technical work.
Oh, thank you.
With that, I would entertain a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Excellent. Sean Burke, I'm going to pass it to you for the roll call.
All right. Ruben.
Yes. Or
Ed.
is it yes or is it agree?
Whichever you'd like. I understand both. So Ruben's a yes. Ed.
Yes.
Jesse.
Yes.
Courtney.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Daniel.
Yes.
Richard H.
Yes.
Siraj.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Andre.
Yes.
Is there anyone that joined after that I didn't get on the roll? All right, that's it.
Happy New Year, all. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Happy New
Same
Year.
to you. Bye.